So you've decided it's time to buy a motorcycle. Welcome to the community, and here are 7 things you should know before you ever walk into a dealership and try to make that deal. These 7 things will apply to all types of motorcycle buying experiences, but obviously I have the most experience with buying dual sport and adventure bikes. Also, much of what I'm about to tell you applies to any bike purchase, whether it's your first or your 100th, so hopefully there's something useful here for you. Before we jump in, I just want to thank today's sponsor, Fanttik, and give you a glimpse at their X9 Pro that we'll talk about a little bit later. The first thing you should do before you buy your first motorcycle is buy your gear. For so many people, gear is an afterthought, and they go in, they negotiate the price of the bike, they spend every penny they have, and then they're about to hit the road and realize, I only have a helmet and nothing else, and that is not safe. So make sure that you're budgeting in ahead of time, and if possible, buying ahead of time the gear that you're gonna need to be safe when you ride that motorcycle. You're never more vulnerable than when you first start riding, and that's the most important time to have the most gear and the best gear possible. You should factor your gear costs into the cost of buying your first bike. It's better to have the gear ahead of time so you know it fits and works properly even before you go on a test ride. Some people are tempted to wait to buy the gear until they find a bike. That is understandable, but you may be tempted then to buy a more expensive bike because you have more cash on hand and skimp on gear. This is dumb. Don't do this. Sometimes you can get a discount from the dealership on the gear if you buy it when you buy the motorcycle. You can even roll it into the loan if that's what you want to do. I'm not sure if I recommend that, but it is an option. In that case, I guess waiting is fine, but you should have your setup picked out ahead of time in order to avoid the temptation to skip it in order to buy a more expensive bike or deal with unexpected dealer fees, which we'll talk about. Tough love moment, but if you can't afford gear, you can't afford a bike. I highly recommend AtGat. We're talking helmet, gloves, jacket, pants, and good motorcycle boots. But if you can't go that far or you're unwilling to go that far, at least get helmet, jacket, and gloves and a good pair of boots. Like 20% of injuries to motorcyclists are to the lower leg, to the ankle area. You need a good pair of boots. So that's number 1, get your gear ahead of time. The number 2 thing you should do before you buy a motorcycle seems obvious, but some people don't do it. Get some training and or get your endorsement. Sometimes those things go hand in hand. Here in Oregon, you have to take the class to get the endorsement, so they kind of go together. But if you're in a state where you don't have to do that, highly recommend getting some training, just having a chance to run some drills and practice basic skills. Those aren't the kind of things you necessarily want to be learning on the road when you're focused on everything else going on. It is nice to get some hands-on training, some coaching with somebody that can give you real-time feedback and learn the basic skills, start to build that muscle memory before you're out in the wild and your life depends on it. You need your endorsement to do a test ride anyway, and you should definitely test ride a bike before you buy it. If you can, some dealerships won't let you. It's important to go in and take the course and get your endorsement ahead of time before you spend a bunch of money on a bike, because you may take the course and discover you don't like motorcycling. You don't like the feeling of being on 2 wheels. It's not for everybody. You need training to be safe on the road. If you're buying a dual sport or adventure bike and you want to get off-road training, you may have to wait until after you buy the bike because you need your own bike. They don't always provide a bike. But if you're buying a street legal bike, definitely take the MSF or Team Oregon course first. They provide motorcycles for you. The number 3 thing you should do before you buy a motorcycle is check insurance costs. You can be blindsided by this if you don't take the time to get a quote on the exact bike that you're buying before you buy it. Insurance costs can vary wildly, even between different bikes with the same engine, like the CB500F and the CBR 500R versus the CB500X. Same motor, really the same speed and amount of dangerousness, but the insurance costs are very different because different people ride them and are more or less likely to get into accidents. So generally, dual sport motorcycles are very cheap to insure. I just paid $120 for a full year on the KLX, but more expensive, bigger adventure bikes and all kinds of bikes, because this applies to all bikes, can be expensive to insure. So make sure you know what you're getting yourself into before you buy the bike, go to put insurance on it, and they're like, oh, that's $300 a month. And you're like, oh crap, I can't afford that and the payment. Speaking of insurance, a good toolkit is invaluable insurance against any mishaps that may occur on the road. And a flat tire is probably the most common type of issue you're going to see. It's the one that I've seen the most in my 7-ish years of riding motorcycles to this point. Thankfully, our friends at Fanttik, make a really great solution to help you out if you happen to have a flat tire out there on the road. I'm planning my next BDR trip, and a portable inflator is an essential piece of my kit whenever I leave the pavement and head into the backcountry where there is no help for miles around. So this Fanttik X9 Pro came along at the exact right time. It's more compact than their previous version, and it weighs less than a pound. It has a maximum inflation pressure of 150 psi, meaning you can use it on your motorcycle and in your car or truck. And with the intelligent mode, you can set your desired pressure and walk away because it'll stop automatically when it hits it. The 8.5 watt-hour battery will run for 23 minutes, so you're covered for multiple flats in the field, hopefully a feature you don't end up needing. And with the accessory storage slot design, you don't need to carry an additional bag or worry about your accessories disappearing into the bottom of your luggage. The hose is permanently attached, and the thing couldn't be simpler to use. Just pull out the end of the hose to activate and push it back into the body to turn it off. I tested it and was able to inflate the front tire of my 300L to the manufacturer recommended pressure of 22 psi in 50 seconds, less than a minute. I've owned and used the previous version with no issues, and a ton of you bought them on my recommendations last time. I've heard nothing but good things from all of you that picked them up then. The new one is smaller and faster and available right now for a stupid low price if you use promo code DorkX9Pro when you buy it using the link in the description. You can use promo code DorkX9Pro to get the Fanttik X9 Pro for $39 if you click on the link in the description. That code is good until the end of September. The number 4 thing you should do before you buy a motorcycle is talk to people about the bike you want to buy. And I mean someone other than the salesman, because the salesperson is always gonna say, oh, this is a great bike for you. You're gonna love it. It's gonna be perfect. Oh, except for maybe this more expensive one over here. Maybe that would be even better for you. They have a little self-interest there. Not all salesmen are like that, but a lot of them are. So talk to people. Hopefully you have friends that ride similar bikes or that ride that bike or have ridden that bike. But if not, then there are great resources online like Facebook groups, advrider.com or thumpertalk.com if you're buying a dual sport or an adventure bike. But I highly recommend having a conversation about what bike you're gonna buy. Just make sure that you use the search function, because maybe the question that you're asking has already been asked. But there are, especially when you're buying your first motorcycle, common misconceptions that can get people in trouble. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've answered the question, should I buy a 300L or a 450L? They're kind of the same, right? They are not the same. I made a whole video on that, which I'll link for you. Those are the kinds of things that new riders don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and that's why it's important to have conversations with people that maybe have a little bit more experience than you in the area of motorcycle that you're looking at. A lot of people get on the wrong bike, hate it, sell it, and end up giving up motorcycling. I bought that 450L with, what, 300 miles on it because 2 people before me had bought it and decided they didn't like it. So I don't want you to end up on the wrong bike. It's important to talk to people and get some perspective on whatever bikes you're looking at. Number 5, before you walk into the dealership, you're gonna wanna check kbb.com, check jdpower.com, and look on Facebook Marketplace or wherever classified ads for motorcycles are for your area, and look for the same bike and see what kind of prices they're going for. That is invaluable information to have before you walk into the dealership. They're gonna throw a ton of numbers at you. This also applies when you're buying from a private party, and it's important to have a number in your head for what it should cost just about, so that when you had $10,000 in your head and they come back with an out-the-door price of 14, you can be like, whoa, wait, what did you add in there? So do your research ahead of time, know what the bike should cost. You'll be in a much better position to negotiate, and you'll know when you're getting screwed over. In addition to that, try to negotiate the price ahead of time, before you even walk in the door if you can. Email is my favorite way to negotiate a price. 1, you can negotiate with multiple dealerships at a time. And 2, it's in writing before you walk in the door. Just make sure that you ask for an out-the-door price. More than once, I've gotten a price from a motorcycle dealership, walked in to sign the paperwork, and they're like, oh, no, well, we hadn't added in the DMV fees and our reconditioning fee. So get an out-the-door price, and if you can, especially if you're getting financing off-site, which we'll talk about in a second, get a purchase order with the exact dollar amount on it. They can email that to you. And make sure that you ask, because I've gotten out the door prices before that were not the out the door price. So ask, does this include the DMV fees? Does this include any other fees that you have, sales tax, things like that? And or if you see additional fees, ask about them, because I've had dealerships nearby, one in particular that I won't go to anymore, that throws in a reconditioning fee on used bikes. So they have like a really low price on the website, but you go in and it's $2,000 more. One of the bikes I was looking at was a Grom. It almost doubled the price because of their bullshit reconditioning fee. So get the out-the-door price. Try to negotiate that price before you ever walk in the door if you can. It's not always possible, but I love to do that over email because there's no pressure of the in-person conversation. They can't use any of those shady tactics on you. Good thing to know is that motorcycle dealerships are generally less willing, in my experience, to negotiate on the prices of new bikes in particular. The margins are just thinner, but they are sitting on a butt ton of inventory right now. At least everyone around here is, so it's a good time to negotiate if you're looking for a deal on a bike. Number 6, before you walk in the door at the dealership, get your own financing. You can finance through the dealership. They're gonna want you to do that. That is the easiest way, and if you don't mind paying a little more for the convenience, that's fine, but all it really takes is an online application and a couple phone calls to your bank to get pre-approved for a certain amount before you walk in the door at the dealership. It actually requires you to then take the information back to your bank and come back to the dealership, which gives you kind of a cooling off period, some time to think about your decision. But get financing ahead of time if you can, but don't tell them that you did that. Just tell them that you're not sure how you're going to pay for it. That is a good way to know what you're spending and what you're going to be able to spend, and it can be useful as a negotiating tactic. Well, I'm only approved for $10,000, you know, stuff like that. You can always take the dealership's deal if they have a better option with a lower interest rate or whatever, but having your own financing gives you a solid position to start from. Number 7 thing you should do before you buy a motorcycle, you should test ride the thing. This should go without saying. Some dealerships won't let you, which sucks. If you get to a dealership that won't let you, don't get discouraged. I would say keep looking. It's worth driving a little bit farther to find a dealership that'll let you do a test ride, I think. So if you can't test ride it, at least sit on the bike and evaluate it. How comfortable is the seat in the sitting position? Can you reach the controls? Put the kickstand up. Does the bike feel tippy or top heavy? Is that something you can get used to, or will you be thinking about it every minute of every ride? Check out the wind protection. Where is the buffeting gonna hit you? That's a lot easier to do on a test ride, but you can kind of guess based on the height of the windscreen when you're sitting on it if you can't ride it. Stand up. How does it feel? Can you reach the bars and controls? Stuff can be adjusted, but it has to be within a comfortable range, and if it's just impossible, then maybe that's not the bike for you. So that's my 7 things you should do before you buy a motorcycle, 7 things to know before you buy a motorcycle. And I just want to say thank you to today's sponsor, Fanttik, for sponsoring the video. Make sure you check out their link in the description. If you have tips for buying your first bike or for buying a bike in general, please leave them in the comments. Let's share those with each other. But for now, and as always, I just want to say thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you, and please do not forget to be excellent to each other. Thank you.
Excellent!